They say nobody is perfect, but they forgot to tell the Indiana Hoosiers. A perfect 10-0 record, something special is blooming in Bloomington as the best team in school history comes to the Shoe. The Buckeyes know that team up north is waiting in the wings, but first they have to take care of that team out west, or else the Big Ten championship game disappears. It's I against O, David against Goliath, neighbor against neighbor. The Football Fever starts right now.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Football Fever. Ben Buchanan here in studio with former Buckeye Jay Richardson. We'll be joined by the rest of the Fever crew here in just a bit. But, Jay, it's another noon game for the Buckeyes. This one's going to be a little cooler than the guys have been used to this season. How does this weather affect, if at all, a top five matchup today, man? How about that?
For this one.
Let's go.
Ben, you know me. I hate the cold. I really do. I had a coach, Luke Fickell, who's now the coach at Wisconsin, used to say, Jay, your production goes with the weather. The warmer it is, the better you play. Soon as it gets cold, I am useless out there. And let me tell you something, I do not envy what these guys have to go through today. However, I think it's more about the wind than it is the temperature, right? I mean, if it's a windy day, it's hard to spin that ball, and the quarterback with the strongest arm usually excels. That's why you had guys like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre in Green Bay at Lambeau Field, because it's hard to spin that ball. Same in Chicago. Yeah. What I love about this matchup today, though, is the weather's going to be bad for both teams.
True.
Okay, and I think it's going to level the playing field. All that matters is that the Buckeyes lean into who they really are and show that identity. We'll get into the matchup, but I don't like this weather.
I don't blame you. Now, thankfully, Jay and I won't have to be suiting up to play in this cold today. Jay, I don't know if you've recognized this. It's incredible. It's always somehow a beautiful, sunny 70 degrees here in the Fever studios. Now, unfortunately, we can't say the same for our guys, Obi and Dave. They're braving the elements out at the Shoe today. Guys, how's it going out there?
Yeah, it's cold and breezy. Obi Stillwell just walked off the set of Yellowstone where he was auditioning to be an extra. The hat's doing some heavy lifting right now to stay on your head. So how would you describe it? They said it's not the cold, it's the wind, and it is pretty breezy out here.
Yeah, it is breezy out here, and it's early. But I guarantee you there's not one player on either team that's thinking about this weather. They are focused and fired up, and at the end of the day, it can be breezy. Then it'll be a run game. If not a run game, a pass game. Maybe a game that the tight ends play a big role, running backs and tight ends, kind of the old school gridiron type of football.
Yeah, and if it is old school gridiron football, I mean, we're going to talk to Kellyanne later in the show with the injury report, but earlier this week we found out Seth McLaughlin, the starting center, is out there, already out Josh Simmons at left tackle. So, Obi, another week of rebuilding the offensive line. If this turns into ground and pound, are you confident they can get the job done?
You know what? It remains to be seen. I think that Indiana has a strong defensive front that's going to bring some questions and some concerns in that area. But you know what? If they're truly 4- and 5-star athletes, like we continue to recruit here at the Ohio State University, I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the talent gap here in just a few minutes, guys. We're going to send it back to you. But Obi's point is well made that, as Carson Hinsman comes in at center today, he's still hypothetically more talented than the guy he's lining up against. We're going to see so much of today, guys, is going to be about the talent gap on this field. Can the Hoosiers make it up?
Yeah, well said, guys. All right, thanks so much. A lot has been said about Indiana this year. Many are obviously shocked. First time in program history. What's the cherry on top? They're now the 5th-ranked team in the nation. Has a nice ring to it for them. But their high ranking naturally has attracted some haters who say they don't deserve to be where they are simply because they haven't played anyone. That's right. Their best win so far is against a 5-5 Michigan team. Even then, the Hoosiers won a close one against the underperforming Wolverines. Further is the fact that Michigan is the toughest in-conference opponent they've faced. The Wolverines are the 10th-ranked squad in the conference. That's right, the rest of Indiana's Big Ten games have come against the bottom 6 teams in the conference, even if you count their next game against Purdue. But here's the thing, Jay. This is what everyone's talking about. The Buckeyes and the Hoosiers have played 3 of the same opponents. We're talking Northwestern, we're talking Michigan State, we're talking Nebraska here. Indiana blew all 3 of those teams out of the water, but the same cannot be said for our Ohio State Buckeyes. If you recall, the Bucks only beat Nebraska by 4, probably could have defeated Nebraska by much more, beat the Spartans by 31 compared to Indiana's 37-point margin. All right, Jay, if you look at these, they say that the proof is in the pudding. How good is this Indiana team this year?
I think this Indiana team is a little bit better than Ohio State wants them to be. And I think the reality of it is when you look at those matchups as you just showed us there, yes, they did not, or Ohio State did not blow these teams out the same way Indiana did. But I think a lot of that comes from the matchups, the styles. They say styles make fights. And I truly believe that Indiana is wired to blow certain teams out. And I think when they come up against certain competitions, they really struggle. When you look at that Michigan game in the fourth quarter, they were down. They had to come back to win that football game. And that was a really, really competitive game the entire way through. And Michigan's not their best self that they've been in past years. But what they have is a fantastic defense. And when you look at Ohio State's defense, okay, you're looking at the first defense in points per game, right? So that's 10 points per game they're holding to. IU, number 2 in points per game, with 44 almost points per game. So you have a fantastic matchup here between an elite offense and elite defense in the Buckeyes. But the reality is the elite offense has not gone against too many elite defenses. The closest one they did was Michigan, and they couldn't barely crack that 20-point mark, which tells you they haven't played anybody, which we've already said 0 ranked opponents on IU's schedule, which means they're going to get a taste of what real football looks like today.
They're playing the number 2 team in America at home. I think we're excited to see that one for sure. Now, the Buckeyes certainly can't take the Hoosiers lightly, despite having the weakest schedule out of the top 12. So the real question here, Jay, what does OSU need to do specifically to win this football game?
Okay, I think it starts defensively in the red zone.
Okay.
Ohio State has a fantastic red zone defense. They're allowing teams only 30% of the time do they score. When you look at IU in the red zone, they're at 82%. That's 4th in the country. So you know IU is going to move the ball. That's going to happen. You know Ohio State's defense is kind of a bend but don't break at times, but man, they can cause turnovers, and in the red zone, they really show up big time. So I think the most important thing is that they continue to be what they've been, Ohio State, which is a fantastic red zone team, and third down is going to be so important against IU. This quarterback, Rourke, really likes to throw the ball deep, Ben. He's got some receivers. He's got over 4 receivers that have gone over 350 yards.
Wow.
He spreads the ball out. You really can't key in on one guy, so you have to play sound defense. And then on the offensive side of the ball, their front 7 is tops in the Big Ten in tackles for loss and sacks. So what does that mean? You run the football against these guys. You're the bigger, stronger athletes. They cannot go man for man with Ohio State, especially not when you look at all those 4 and 5 stars Ohio State has versus IU, who only has, I think, 5 4 or 5 star players to Ohio State's like 20. So I think it comes down to physical matchups. Can you win the battle in the trenches? Can you get your hands on people, Ben? Can you rough them up?
At the end of the day,
can you get out there and do something?
Mano-y-mano, man, right?
Mano-y-mano,
Some things
man.
never change in football. There's all the schemes, all the X's and O's. Chip Kelly's going to put a good game together today, but got to beat the man in front of you, right? Some things,
every time.
Some things never change. All right, it's going to be very important to come out strong against this red-hot Indiana team. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the Hoosiers have given us quite the scares in the past. For more on that, let's send things out to Dave and Obi at the shoe, guys.
You know, it's interesting because the Buckeyes always beat Indiana. They have for decades. And yet, Obi, Indiana does put the fear of God in you every now and again. I think about the 2015 game over in Bloomington. You were there. Yeah. I was there, where Zeke Elliott had to bust 3 50-yard runs in the second half to survive. We've seen this before where they are scary.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. You don't know who's going to show up. And I think that if you look at Indiana, and we talk about the Buckeyes, right? We talk about their identity and when are they going to show up and who are they this week, right? Talk about Indiana. That's been like 100 years of their identity, right? They'll come up, they'll show up, and all of a sudden they're amazing. And then the next game, they're losing to a team that they certainly should beat, right? But they definitely embrace the David and Goliath mindset, and that's the thing that is going to be interesting because, yes, I was there in 2015. Zeke broke out a 55-yard touchdown, then a 65-yard touchdown, another 50-plus yard touchdown. And if it was not for him, who obviously the offensive line opened that up, but it was his runaway speed that really broke up that game. It's very rare that we see an offensive guy take over the game like Ezekiel did. Hopefully, Ohio State does not get into a situation in which they need someone to arise, but this is not going to be a lay-down game to me.
Yeah, and if you look at that team, they were the defending national champions. I've talked to Urban Meyer about it actually a few weeks ago. He said, I thought the 2015 team was actually better than the championship team. They just laid that egg here at the shoe against Michigan State that year. But okay, let's get math nerdy for a second here. The transitive property says that if average Indiana teams sometimes almost beat exceptional Buckeye teams, Then, Obi, what happens when an actual good Indiana team plays? And that's what we find out today. We think these guys are really good. They're good. Are they championship good? We find out today.
Yeah, we do. And you know what? It's something. It's such a psychological gymnastics to me, right? You know, because you really do have to take off the brand of Indiana. If this was Michigan, or if it was Michigan State, or if it was Penn, it would be different, right? But it's Indiana, and so you kind of sit back and like, hold on, we're talking about Indiana?
Yeah.
We're talking about practice, right? They're talking about Indiana. So it's a different mentality, but you know what? You have to bring out that warrior inside of you and understand that at the end of the day, you're under attack as a Buckeye and you got to respond.
I will say this. If there's one good thing psychologically, you mentioned that, it's that the Buckeyes won't take this team for granted because they are 10-0. They're top 5. They are getting the hype. That wasn't always the case. I mean, if you go back even to the 1970s, the Buckeyes have always handled Indiana and maybe took them lightly. In fact, we talked to two-time Heisman Trophy winner Archie Griffin about that earlier this week.
I'll never forget my senior year. We kind of took Indiana lightly going into the game, and it was a heck of a football game. Matter of fact, they were beating us for a while, and I think that's the game that people talk about. Lee Corso going out, taking a picture of a scoreboard when they were ahead of us 7-0. But they gave us a good go that particular game, but we took them lightly. But I guarantee you, Ryan Day and this team's not taking this team lightly. They're 10-0. They're a doggone good football team.
Yeah, pretty candid words there from Mr. Two-Time. He admits they took him lightly. Obi, I don't think when there's the 0 next to their name in the loss column, they get taken lightly today.
No, I don't think so. And then and Ohio State has still so much to prove, right? They already have a loss. They have felt that. They felt the hurt and the pain of that. They know that their season every Saturday is on the line. I don't think there's any letdown today.
Yeah, the winner of this game will control their own destiny. Next week, of course, the Buckeyes have Michigan. Indiana has a gimme matchup against Purdue. So whoever wins today in the driver's seat to face Oregon in the Big Ten Championship game 2 weeks from now at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. We're just getting started, though, here on the Football Fever. Coming up next, we're headed inside the stadium to our Kellyanne Stitz to find out who's in and who's out. The injury report coming up next on the Fever.
All right, we're taking you back live to the Shoe this morning. As we've been telling you, it's a chilly one out there at the Horseshoe. Number 2 Buckeyes getting ready to do battle with the number 5 Hoosiers today in the Horseshoe. Going to be a great ball game. Well, he certainly had a massive and perhaps an overlooked impact on the Buckeye offense here in 2024. That's right. After transferring from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin has brought experience, ability, and leadership to this offensive line here at Ohio State. But now the Buckeyes are going to have to do without him. For more on the center's devastating injury, let's send things out to our Kellyanne Stitz. Kellyanne?
Yeah, Ryan Day confirming the news that center Seth McLaughlin is out for the season. He tore his Achilles tendon in a non-contact injury in practice on Tuesday. But he still is here today supporting the Buckeyes. In fact, quarterback Will Howard was one of the later arrivals into the stadium. He stayed back with an injured McLaughlin who came in on a scooter. But looking at this offensive line that's had a lot of movement this season, the next man up mentality couldn't be more true for this position group. Day mentioned that Carson Hinsman will shift back to center, a position that he's very familiar with. He started at center in all 12 regular season games. The last season, the plan at left guard is to have Austin Sarabeld step up. He did start at left guard earlier in the season for a then injured Donovan Jackson. Jackson, of course, shifted to left tackle. Again, a lot of movement, but Jackson is a veteran on this offensive line, and he believes that Sarabeld will be prepared for the big moment today.
He's just going to keep rolling with what we have. Obviously, you have to be on the same page, guard and tackle. So I've been, in the film room with him, trying to get on the same page, make sure we see the same things. But I'm excited. He's a athletic monster, man. It's just getting on the same page is key in situations like this.
That's why you recruit depth, and that's why you work to get those guys in the game. That's why you work in the off season to build depth. And we knew things like this can happen. And this is not the NFL. You can't just sign guys off of waivers. You have to have guys ready to go because, again, at the end of the day, nobody cares. We got to move on and we got to win games.
The depth on the offensive line continues to be a concern. Now 2 season-ending injuries between Joshua Simmons and Seth McLaughlin, and Zemahalski is listed as out today. But some good news, Ryan Day said that he was expecting tight end Will Kasmerick to be available. He said he worked very hard to be able to get back onto the field, and he is available today to help strengthen that tight end room against Indiana. For the Football Fever, I'm Kellyanne Stitz reporting. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Kellyanne. Seth will surely be missed, and his injury means this next man up mentality is going to be put into practice yet again here at Ohio State. So what will the offensive line look like today against Indiana now? That's the big question. Well, as Kellyanne just said, we know what the right side is going to look like. Tegra Shabola at guard, Josh Fryer at tackle will remain unchanged. What we don't know is how these other 3 will fit into the format moving forward. After the Josh Simmons injury against Oregon, the left side of the offensive line finally seemed to be good to go. Donovan Jackson shifting to tackle, Carson Hinsman standing in at guard. But McLaughlin's injury likely means Hinsman will shift to his natural position of center and allow the sophomore Aston Severveld to take over at guard duties. Jay, no matter where they decide to line up today, this really is the epitome of this next man up mentality.
That's all it's about. Next man up. You have to replace a great with the great. That's why we have such fantastic recruiting. But this is going to be a challenge. The right side of that offensive line, as you said, is the only consistent part of that O-line this entire season, has not changed. I would anticipate Ryan Day probably leaning more towards the right side with some of those direct runs and some of the things they want to do. And then when you get into the protection, now you've got to decide how you want to help. Is G. Scott going to be staying in the chip? Are you going to let Trey stay in the chip and help? You just don't want the defensive line from IU to get going a little bit. But I got a lot of faith, honestly, in our guys up front. They've all played every position, it seems like, at this point. So they all kind of know where they fit. It's just about finding chemistry early on and not putting them in uncomfortable positions.
You're right. We've called it the patchwork offensive line, but they have managed to stay at an elite level, and we'll see it. We'll see the next man up today. This is another week here where the offensive line's chemistry is going to be thrown out of whack, as we've mentioned. What type of offensive schemes do you see Chip Kelly bringing out today, Jay?
Yeah, so when you look at injuries on your O-line and you look at how do we protect the guys on our offensive line while also allowing the offense to flourish and do what it needs to do, it all starts with that first word I said, protection. So it's going to be a lot of slide protection, very little man protection, I would imagine, just because you don't want to leave a guy in a new position uncomfortable in a one-on-one situation. You're going to have tight ends that are going to stay in and block for about a 2 count before they release, and you're going to have running backs that are going to stay in and block for a 1 or 2 count before they release. That means when you're trying to throw the ball downfield and you really want to get those huge chunky yardage, you're going to have to leave an extra man in protection, because I don't know that I would trust just 5-on-4 up front, especially when there's blitzes and exotic things that this IU defense does. You want to make sure sure you keep Will Howard clean this entire game, Ben, and that's going to come down to being creative in your protection while still being aggressive in your passing game.
Yeah, great analysis from our resident expert, Jay Richardson. Always appreciate you, man. Coming up next, the game isn't only about football being played on the field, it's also about the fundraising done off the gridiron. Jay?
That's right. I am sitting down with the president and CEO of the United Way of Central Ohio to talk about their challenge to fans. How are they going to fight childhood food insecurity while also getting one over on that team up north?
Here on the sticker. And the sticker there.
All right, time now for another G&J Pepsi Fantastic Photo of the Week. And with this one, we're heading back to the Earl Bruce era. It's memories like these that Luann says kept her family loving the Buckeyes back then and allows for them to make new memories in the scarlet and gray today. Another great picture. Loving these. Remember to send us your photos of how you're watching our Buckeyes by going to chime in on the ABC6 app. And as always, we look forward to seeing you there. Now to the Football Fever Best Trivia in the Land, sponsored by Parlay Sporting Club and Kitchen. This week's question is, who was the first ever Buckeye player to win a Heisman Trophy? Was it Les Horvath, Archie Griffin, or Troy Smith? Simply scan the QR code on the screen, answer the question correctly, and you could win a $100 gift card to Parlay Sporting Club and Kitchen to enjoy some of this amazing food you're seeing right now. Always makes me hungry. All right, before we head to break here, let's send things over to Jay, who's joined in studio today by Lisa Cordes, the president and CEO of United Way of Central Ohio. She's here to talk about an amazing event that's helping feed futures here in the Buckeye State.
Thank you so much, Ben, and good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. Great.
Welcome to the greatest show on television. Happy to have you here. Listen, tell us a little bit about this United Rivals campaign.
Great. So United Way of Central Ohio, that serves Franklin County, Union, and Pickaway, thought it would be interesting, given the competition that we have with the state up north, to challenge the United Way for southeastern Michigan to see who could raise the most money to help feed children during holiday breaks, which is a time when they're not at school, where many kids depend on that environment to get nutritious meals.
Absolutely.
And so they said, yes, we're up for that challenge. Michigan said that,
So now it's a competition.
Now it's a competition. It'll run through midnight on game day.
Okay.
and we will see who can raise the most money. We are ahead right now.
Okay.
They might not have their starting players out yet. Like we're a little nervous.
So things could change.
Because things could change, yes. But
Things could change if we don't make a difference, Columbus.
that's right. So if you give $25, you can feed 20 children in an after-school program.
That's beautiful. So,
And
oh,
yeah, more. You can get in a raffle to win tickets to the game. And this package, this Beat Michigan package, includes 2 tickets to the game. They're great seats that have been given to us by a generous donor.
Okay.
The parking pass that goes with it.
that's a key one, right?
Right?
You need the parking
that's
pass.
right. And former OSU player Mike Doss has invited whomever the winner is to join his tailgate.
Oh, the All-American himself is saying you can come to my tailgate if you donate.
Right.
And help these kids.
So for every $25, you get 1 entry. So if you give $100, you have 4 chances to win.
Is there like a big grand prize that the winner of the drawing gets? It's one of those things, or is there?
It's that package.
Excellent. So that's the big
Yes,
package.
Yes. Now next
Excellent.
week we also have some signed footballs that Archie Griffin has given to us that will be incentivizing giving too. So we want people to make this fun, and we also want to be able to feed kids. If you give $50, you can support 10 children for weekend
Yes.
meals, which is very important. And you can get a T-shirt.
Uh-oh.
Similar to
the
this
unveiling
one.
of the T-shirt. Hold on. Listen, 3, 2, 1. Let them see the T-shirt.
And Michigan has one as well, of course, in their colors.
We don't care about theirs.
No, we don't.
We're very concerned about ours, and we're
Yes,
very
we are.
concerned about feeding these children.
We
and
are.
This is a huge priority. You know, I was just discussing with an AD about how it's really a real issue now with kids who are not getting tons of meals outside
Yes.
of the classroom setting or outside of the school,
Yeah.
and how important that is. And it's holiday time, folks. I mean, this
Right.
is the time where everyone should get a warm meal, everyone should be fed and have a good time and be with their families. And one, we got to thank you for doing this. And lastly, just tell us right now why this campaign matters and how people can get involved.
Great. Well, it matters, you know, in our state, 47% of our children are food insecure.
Oh.
Like, that's not acceptable, right? And so there are United Ways across our state serving different communities. So a lot of United Ways can benefit. So if you are not in Franklin County, but let's say you're in Cleveland or Cincinnati, the gift will follow your zip code and support your local community. So we wanted the whole state to win.
Yes.
Because of that 40%, statistic about food insecurity. So there are lots of ways to get involved. United Rivals is the website. You'll learn about the different volunteer programs that we have to engage with kids and help get food access to children. And we hope that you'll wear your T-shirt to the game next week and help us beat Michigan.
First of all, beat Michigan, but most importantly,
Yes.
what you guys are doing is going to help feed children, and that's the
Yes.
big priority. Those are the biggest winners in all of this, are the kids, correct?
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing that. Yes.
Well, we appreciate you being here this morning. We thank you so much for sharing. We thank you so much for motivating folks to get out there and find ways to not just support the kids, support United Way for what they do for the children, and let's make a difference this holiday season, huh?
UnitedRivals.org. Go there now.
Thank you so much. Now listen, coming up, he's brash, he's confident. Who are we kidding? You can just Google him. Indiana's head coach is lighting a fire under his players in Buckeye Nation with some choice words. We're going to look at the man who's given the Hoosiers their first ever 10-0 start.
know what? He did hit on one very important thing. Purdue does suck. He was right. Curt Cignetti, nail to head. He was right. Here in Columbus, they probably agree about the Michigan part. We're about to find out about the Ohio State part. He's out there on opening night trying to re-energize a program that has been lifeless since its inception. So good for Curt Cignetti. No hate. I think it was a hilarious speech. Loved it. Welcome back live to the show here on The Football Fever. That's a clip from the Buckeye Fever podcast. Make sure you subscribe and download to that. But what I showed there, Obi, was the day Curt Cignetti was introduced at Assembly Hall at an Indiana basketball game. And his opening speech is like 15 seconds long. He says, "I've never taken a back seat to anybody, and I don't plan on starting now." Crowd goes nuts. Then he goes in on Purdue, in on Ohio State and Michigan. So do you like your 63-year-old with a little bit of swagger? Because he has an aura about him that few coaches have.
You know what? I do. If you remember Buckeye Nation, Coach Tressel did a lot of the same thing. Maybe not with that vigor, right? You know what I'm saying?
With a sweater vest.
With a sweater vest. But he said, "You'll be proud of us."
Yeah.
And he was talking about that Michigan game, and we needed a coach. Ohio State needed a coach at that point in time to step up and have some bravado, right? And as the program was transitioning. So I like what he's doing. I understand why he's doing it, and it's working.
Yeah, it is working. All right, so he won a lot of games at James Madison. Then he comes here, first-year head coach, just 10 games into the season, 10-0. And Obi, they give him a new contract extension, 8 years at about $8 million per season, plus a $1 million annual retention bonus. So it's about $9 million per season. And I couldn't help but think, wait a second, where have I seen this movie before?
Right.
And it was a few years ago when Mel Tucker got Michigan State hot, and right out of the gate, they give him this big extension. His first game after the extension, just like Curt Cignetti, was here at the Shoe. And if you remember that day, Mel Tucker got a check, and then he got a reality check.
Yes,
because the Buckeyes beat him 56-7. Now, I want to go on the record that I think Curt Cignetti is a far better coach than Mel Tucker. They are not getting 56-7 in there today. I can guarantee you that. But what do you think about extending a coach just 10 games into his tenure?
All right, my first advice is this. Listen, everyone that's out there, you don't tell a girl that you love her on the first date. That's what that reminds me of, right? You're like, "Hey, I love you." Like, "Oops, I'm sorry." You can't take it back. You're about to extend his contract. You can't take that back. What do you do now? Well, he has to go out here and perform. And perform. He will. I agree with you. They are riding on the momentum of Cignetti, and at the end of the day, what do? You got to run. You can't go like salmon against the current. You got to go with the current, and I think they're doing the right thing. So, hey, 8 years. We'll see.
Yeah, come for the football and stay for the dating advice from Obi Stillwell. All right, so Ryan Day was asked about it. He was asked about Curt Cignetti saying, quote, "Ohio State sucks" at his intro news conference, and what he thought of Cignetti's swagger. Here's what Ryan Day had to say.
You know, everybody has to motivate their team, and certainly when you feel like you have good players, then it certainly gives you confidence, and I think he's done a great job of instilling that. But ultimately, this is always about us,
Yeah, and you talked about David and Goliath earlier. He has got his team to buy into this because they have 31 transfers this year, Obi. Only 6 of them are Power 4 kids, which means 25 of them are small school guys, chip on the shoulder to the extreme, and he even went back to his old stomping grounds at James Madison.
Yes, you know what? 13 of those players are from James Madison. You know what? It is interesting, if you look at the size, especially if you look at the linebackers, 6'1", Jalen Walker, 6'1", he's 218, Aiden Fisher, he's 6'1", 233. These are all that mid-sized linebacker. Yeah. You talk about a chip on your shoulder, you're like, hey, if I would have been an inch taller, if I would have been about 5 or 10 more pounds heavier, then I would have got the Power 5 recruit. I may have been at this stadium already. Well, guess what? They didn't get that. And I guarantee you, Cignetti is playing on that to the nth degree, and he should. I think these guys are coming in. A lot of these guys are one-year guys. They're either juniors or they're seniors. Their legacy is on the line. So, Buckeye Nation, if you think that this is just going to be a lay down, or you think, hey, all of a sudden Ohio State's going to just come and show up and Indiana's going to lay down, It's not going to happen.
No, and it's so easy to sell it to kids, to sell to a room full of kids. Nobody wanted you, and guess what? I was at James Madison.
Right.
Nobody wanted me either, Obi. There was a rallying cry in a unified locker room in Bloomington.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. He's saying, prove me right today.
Yeah.
Prove me right. I believe in you. Now prove the nation right that I chose you, I brought you here, and I did the right thing. I think there's going to be a rallying call. Now, is this I'm just going to throw out this prediction. I think Ohio State either literally blows these guys away, or I think Indiana wins by like a field goal.
Okay, so you think they have to break their spirit early, basically, or else look out.
Or look out, because if Ohio State comes into this game mediocre, if Ohio State comes in and they're trying to figure out their identity and they're lukewarm, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You have to come early, often, and you have to take the fight from them, or they will stick around and they will pull this one off.
Well, lukewarm actually sounds pretty nice right now because it is very breezy, windy. We said earlier the running game might be key. Coming up next on The Football Fever, our own Kellyanne Stitz goes one-on-one with the guy we expect to have a big afternoon. Quinshon Judkins, that's next when the Fever rolls on.
Butler offensive checkup. We're checking in on one half of that two-headed monster at running back in Quinshon Judkins. Our Kellyanne Stitz sat down with the Ole Miss transfer ahead of game day.
Quinshon, Indiana comes to town with the top rushing defense in the nation. Are you guys excited for that challenge?
Definitely. Our home game with the top 5 matchup. I'm excited to see all our fans come and pack out the stadium and stand up on third down. So it should be really fun this weekend.
Unfortunate injury to Seth McLaughlin on the offensive line, some more stepping up on the line. Are you confident in their ability to help you guys run the ball against Indiana?
Yeah, definitely confident in those guys. The mentality they have is to come in and step up. So I don't have any fear that they won't come in and do their job and execute. So super proud of those guys, how hard they worked all week, and I think they're ready to step up.
How have they looked in practice?
I think our whole team as a whole, everybody has executed. Our coaches have done such a great job on just preparing us for the game this weekend, and I think everybody has done their job and went out there and played as hard as they could this whole week.
A trip to the Big Ten Championship on the line in this one. How do you guys manage those kind of expectations? And I'm sure it's a welcome challenge for you guys.
Yeah, I would say, just more so focusing on the now and being present as a team and not foreshadowing into the future, and just focusing on, being who we are and not making any, expectations for ourselves, just to go out there and play football and try to get a win.
How would you describe the vibe in the locker rooms right now?
I think everyone is super joyful. Everybody's super excited, a lot of intensity. We're ready to go out there and showcase everything to the world.
Thank you, Quinshon, and good luck this weekend against Indiana.
Appreciate it.
Well, it's been a while. If you can believe it, Ohio State hasn't seen the inside of Lucas Oil Stadium in 4 years now. Hard to wrap your mind around something like that, but that could all change after today. We'll walk through the scenarios that could make or break the Buckeyes' Big Ten championship berth. This is the Football Fever live from Columbus. Well, the Buckeyes will need to face some hard truths heading into this game. The road to Indy simply runs through Bloomington. If the Bucs want to earn a place in the Big Ten championship, they'll have to beat Indiana. And if they lose, simply put, a lot of things are going to have to go right. So let's take a look at the most likely scenarios here. We already know Oregon clinched their spot to Indy in last week's win versus Purdue. Right now, Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State remain in the running. Both the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers control their own destiny. OSU needs to beat Indiana today and then obviously crush that team up north next week. Indiana will earn a trip to Lucas Oil Stadium if they beat Ohio State and then go on to beat Purdue. But even if they lose today, they could still clinch a spot if OSU loses to Michigan and they're able to beat Purdue in that contest. And then Penn State, they still look to have life as well. They'll first need to beat both Minnesota and Maryland. Then they'll need OSU to lose to Michigan and the Buckeyes to beat Indiana. Jay, there are certainly a lot of moving parts here.
Well, first things first, how good is the Big Ten in 2024?
Pretty
This
great.
is the best conference in football. 4 teams in the top 5. And when you see just all the things that need to happen that make it real, that there are still 3 different teams that could have a chance to play in the Big Ten title, it just tells you how great the competition in the Big Ten is. So that's pretty impressive. That's amazing to see. I just don't see any of that stuff mattering when you got Ohio State, who is looking down the barrel of IU and Michigan in back-to-back weeks. I personally believe none of those scenarios that you just brought up are going to matter, because I think Ohio State handles business both weeks and earns a chance to have the huge rematch in Indy versus Oregon, and man, that's going to be a heck of a game. And if I'm being honest, I think that's the game that all of college football wants to see. That's the rematch everyone wants to see. That's going to bring in the numbers, and I got a feeling, Ben, that's what's going to happen.
1 second by 1 point at Autzen. You give me a neutral stadium, these Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm taking these Buckeyes again. I'll just leave it at that.
And also, just in Will Howard's defense in that game in Eugene, he did have a second left on the clock when he slid.
100% right.
If that's a home game for Ohio State, the clock stops. Because it's on the road, everyone rushed the field. The referees decided we're not going to try to tell everybody to get back off to the sidelines for that 1 second. We're going to just call the game a wrap. I hated that.
Speaking truth.
But that lets me know what Ohio State can do when they lock in.
Good chance for a rematch. We'll be hoping for it. Got to take care of business today, noon in the Horseshoe. All right, after another week of college football, this is what the current playoff bracket looks like behind us. Ohio State still occupying that 5 seed, which means likely they'll play the Ashton Genty-led Boise State Broncos at home should results go our way. But Jay, let's say we do lose to Indiana today. Worst case scenario, are the Buckeyes' playoff hopes dashed after that?
Absolutely not. That makes Ohio State a 2-loss team. I don't know if you know this, but Alabama, Georgia, these are 2-loss teams, and I think they're still in it. And if you're going to tell me that you got SEC teams that are still in it with 2 losses, you can't tell me that the number 2 team in the country, after losing to a top 5 opponent, I'm imagining if Ohio State was to lose, it'd be a very thin margin. That's the same with the game at Eugene. How do you keep them out? How do you keep Boise, Miami in there after losing to Georgia Tech? There's so many different scenarios which Ohio State certainly still wins this. I just don't see Ohio State being out of this with the loss today. But I don't think that loss is going to come. Even if it does, they're going to be fine.
Yeah, this was an unranked Indiana, maybe a 4-6, 5-5 football team. Maybe we're talking different, but this is a 10-0 top 5 team coming in. I like the Buckeyes to get a victory today.
And it's not if you lose, it's who you lose and how you lose to them. And I think Ohio State's going to be just fine.
Style points matter in college football. All right, much more to come here on The Football Fever. Dave gives his keys to the game, and we hear Obi's final thoughts. This is The Football Fever.
Welcome back to The Football Fever. Time now for our Hyundai keys to the game. Center of attention. Seth McLaughlin is out. Carson Hinsman, it is your time to shine under center. He needs to play well. Confidence killer. We talked about this with Obi earlier in the show. Do not let this team believe, because they've made a living 10 wins off belief. And my final key, number 2 for number 2. And what I mean by that is the number 2 in the nation needs number 2 to show up in a game like this. Emeka Egbuka, in his last 4 games, averaging just 22 yards per game. He must show up today, and better yet, they must scheme him the football today. All right, final thoughts here now live at the shoe with Obi Stillwell. When you look at Indiana, Obi, I know you think they do one thing very well. What is that, and how do the Buckeyes stop it?
That is the back shoulder pass. Watching anybody who's watched Indiana's game, the ability that the quarterback has in that relationship with the wide receiver, in which you would think they're going deep, but then they turn, and that back shoulder pass is so hard to defend. Had a great conversation with secondary coach Tim Walton on last night, and I had to ask him, what about this back shoulder pass? It's kind of like the pick and roll. I'm kind of dating myself, but the old school Utah Jazz, Karl Malone and John Stockton, right? It was almost hard to stop, because even though you knew the pick and roll was coming, it's like, how do we stop it? So even though you know this back shoulder pass is coming, how do you stop it? Coach Walton was very confident. He said, listen, we've been working on this all week. What we're going to do is we're going to be very aggressive. We're going to get up in their face, and then we're going to be aggressive even over top of the route, right? Playing over top of the route, but also being aggressive up front is what's going to help stop that back shoulder pass.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how they shuffle the secondary as well. Denzel Burke took a little bit of time off. He was shuffled in a little bit more with Jermaine Matthews Jr. in the last game. We'll see how Tim Walton shuffles that up today. All right, guys, final thought here from the shoe. If only this day would have a little rain, right? It's actually started raining. Now, Obi has to take my word for it because his hat has so much square footage. He does not know it's raining yet, but he'll find out soon enough, guys. So that's the story here at the shoe. We have another top 5 showdown. Can't wait for the Bucs and the Hoosiers.
You guys are troopers, man. I'll tell you what. Looking forward to a top 5 matchup. Jay, still talking about that. Number 5, Indiana. Number 2, Ohio State.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great game. We talk about November being for the contenders. It's here, man. Final thoughts for this game.
Yeah, I think weather is going to be a factor. I'm really curious to see how that affects the game plan offensively for both sides of the football. And then I really, really want to see Ohio State's defense continue to stay aggressive, continue to mix up coverages, continue to use twists up front, and really put some pressure on Rourke. The kid is not great under pressure, but when he has a clear pocket and he can look downfield, he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. So I hope Ohio State continues to stay aggressive with him. I look for an amazing matchup today in the shoe.
Yeah, no doubt. What about this Cignetti effect, though? I mean, Ohio State says it's about us. Ryan Day's made it that's apparent. How bought in are you on this head coach? I mean, Indiana, call it what it is. We're normally lower tier in the Big Ten. This is an undefeated Indiana football team coming.
So
today.
I like Curt Cignetti. I like his fire. I like what they call it, moxie. I think he's an aggressive coach, and he's found a way to inspire a bunch of transfers. A la Prime. I think he is the Indiana version of Deion Sanders when it comes to just the blueprint for how to take a program from irrelevance to relevancy almost overnight. And I think that's very, very impressive. However, I think that kind of runs out today. When you walk into the shoe and when you have to go against those 110, 15 plus thousand fans, and you got those Buckeyes out there and they see those silver bullets and they understand that this team is a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, a lot of bit faster than any competition we've seen all week, I think instantly there's the intimidation factor. And then it's, how are we going to attack these Buckeyes consistently with what they have defensively and offensively? I don't think they have enough, Ben. I think it's a great story. I think it's been a good story all season long. But I think Ohio State is motivated. I think Ryan Day is as motivated as we've ever seen him in his entire coaching career. And this is like all the chips pushed to the middle of the table for Ryan Day, and he's going all out. And this is going to be the first of 2 weeks where he dominates.
This could be a reckoning. There's no doubt about it. Stat that really stood out to me there, that Emeka Egbuka, right? I mean, very kind of lower receiving yards last couple weeks. Does that surprise you? Does he have an impact today? Need number 2 to play.
It really surprised me. I think, you're targeting JJ. You had the Carnell Tate game last week, and you really wanted to feature those guys. And I think Emeka's right there whenever we need him. He is going to be like the chain on the bike. He's going to keep that thing going. I don't know that it's an issue at all. I think Ohio State has to continue to find the open man. I don't think Ohio State needs to target any specific receiver. I think they have to just be themselves, run the football, and then use the run to set up the pass. And then I do think there's one kid they got to target, and that's Jeremiah Smith. I think he's such a game changer. Continue to get him the ball, and I want to see Will Howard nail a couple deep balls in the rain to Jeremiah Smith. That would be huge for this Buckeye offense.
Yeah, generational talent when you talk about Jeremiah Smith. Will Howard, I think that deep ball is going to be pivotal. He's been elite, right? Those short intermediary routes. My special teams have to come up big today. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. Special units, you're that third unit, can make this a championship football team. So looking forward to it today. Should be a good one here.
I cannot wait.
Everyone, that'll do it for us here on The Football Fever. We have the Ohio State Buckeyes, the Indiana Hoosiers. They're kicking off in just a few minutes. Make sure to join us tonight right here on ABC for the Football Fever post-game show. We'll have reaction from our Buckeye players, our head coach, Ryan Day. Until then, enjoy the game, everyone. Go Bucs!
Go Bucs!